At 58, I thought I'd seen every kind of office politics imaginable. Then my new manager called me office grandma in front of 22 employees, and the room laughed just long enough for 11 people to quietly start saving screenshots. He called me office grandma. The room went dead silent. I had worked at Calder and Finch for 19 years, long enough to know which deadlines mattered, which clients hated surprises, and which problems could be solved before they ever reached an executive's inbox. At 58, I was a senior operations coordinator. I wasn't loud, flashy, or interested in office politics. I simply knew the work, and people trusted me when things got messy. Then Brent Caldwell became our new manager. He arrived with an expensive watch, a polished smile, and a vocabulary full of words like agility, modernization, and fresh energy. On his first morning, he gathered all 22 of us near the main conference room and announced that the department was entering a new era. At first, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Then the comments started. When younger employees asked questions, Brent called them curious. When I asked for clarification, he called me traditional. When Daniel suggested keeping a backup spreadsheet, Brent praised his caution. I had suggested the same thing 2 days earlier. Brent told me we needed to move beyond old habits. Small differences, easy to dismiss. That was what made them dangerous. By the second week, Brent had started turning my experience into a running joke. You probably remember when everything was faxed. Laura knows where all the old systems are buried. You've been here forever, right? I smiled when politeness required it, but I noticed who laughed and who looked uncomfortable. Workplace ageism rarely announces itself. It usually walks in wearing a grin. Then came Friday's team reset. The conference room was bright with cold morning light, and the long glass table was crowded with notebooks, coffee cups, and 22 people trying to look enthusiastic. Brent stood beside a slide that read, "Building the Next Generation Operations Team." He asked each employee what they brought to the department. "Creativity," Maya said. "Analytics," Daniel answered. "Client relationships," Marcus offered. When it was my turn, I said, "Institutional knowledge." Brent smiled. "Exactly. Every office needs institutional memory." Then he looked around the room. "And we've got our very own office grandma." For 1 second, nobody moved. Then a few nervous laughs escaped. Heat climbed into my face, but I kept my voice steady. "I prefer Laura." His smile tightened. "Come on, it's a compliment." "A compliment usually sounds like one." The room went quiet again. Brent quickly moved to the next person, but the mood never recovered. What had been a corporate exercise now felt like a public humiliation everyone had been forced to witness. After the meeting, Maya stopped beside my desk. That was inappropriate. I noticed. Daniel joined us. He's been doing this for days. I looked toward Brent's glass office. He was already typing, completely relaxed. That bothered me more than the joke. He thought nothing had happened. By lunch, 4 coworkers had privately messaged me to say they were sorry. I thanked them and went back to work. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't planning a confrontation either. 19 years in operations had taught me that anger feels powerful for 5 minutes, while documentation stays useful much longer. At 3:17 p.m., Brent posted in our department group chat, "Great reset today. Love seeing everyone adapt." A few people reacted with emojis. Then he added, "Even Office Grandma survived the new software demo." I stared at the message. This time, there was no room for tone, memory, or excuses. It was written evidence. My phone buzzed almost immediately. "Maya, did you screenshot that?" I looked across the office. She was already watching me. I typed back, "Yes." Her reply came seconds later. "Good." I saved the image in a folder labeled Workplace Communications. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, just a record. What I didn't know was that several other people were quietly doing the same thing. And Brent had no idea how many witnesses were already keeping receipts. By Monday morning, Brent had turned one bad joke into a pattern. I arrived early and found 2 new messages in the department chat. One was about deadlines. The other was Brent joking that I should teach the kids how we did things in the old days. Nobody reacted. That silence felt different now. At 9:10, Maya walked past my desk and quietly said, "Save everything." I already had. Over the next 3 days, Brent became bolder. He interrupted me in meetings, explained basic software functions I had used for years, and once asked Daniel to double-check Laura's numbers before a client report went out. Daniel looked confused. "I already checked them," he said. Brent shrugged. "Just being careful." My numbers were correct. Again. The frustrating part wasn't one comment, it was the accumulation. A dozen small cuts, each harmless when viewed alone, but together they formed a clear picture of workplace disrespect. Then Brent made a mistake. He started putting it in writing. In one group chat, he wrote that I was old school but lovable. In another, he joked that the new dashboard might be too futuristic for certain veteran employees. Someone replied with an awkward laughing emoji. Brent added, "You know who I mean." I took a screenshot. 2 minutes later, Maya sent me the same image. Then Daniel did. That was new. By Wednesday afternoon, I had 6 screenshots in my folder, but only 3 had come from my own screen. People were sending them to me without being asked. No speeches, no dramatic declarations, just evidence. At lunch, Priya sat across from me in the cafeteria. The room smelled of toasted bread and burnt coffee, while conversations bounced softly off the glass walls. "He did something similar to me," she said. I lowered my fork. What happened? "He called me the diversity hire during a private conversation." My stomach tightened. Did anyone hear it? No. Did he write anything? She hesitated. Not that exact phrase, but I have messages. She showed me her phone. Brent had written that Priya was great optics for leadership. I stared at the screen. That was when my irritation became something heavier. This was not only about me. A toxic manager rarely picks one person forever. He tests boundaries. If nobody stops him, the circle expands. I told Priya to keep her messages, nothing more. I wasn't organizing a rebellion. I wasn't asking coworkers to take sides. But the office had begun doing something on its own. People were comparing experiences, quietly, carefully, and Brent seemed completely unaware. That afternoon, he called me into his office. His desk was almost empty except for a laptop, a leather notebook, and a decorative sign that said, "Move fast." "Laura," he said, leaning back, "I want to make sure we're good. We're working together." He smiled. That sounded very corporate. "We are at work." For a moment, the smile disappeared. Then he leaned forward. "I've noticed you've been a little distant." "I've been doing my job." "I know, you're experienced, very experienced." There it was again, he continued. "I just don't want you feeling threatened by all the changes." I looked at him. Why would I feel threatened? He paused. "Some longtime employees struggle when younger leadership comes in." The room became strangely quiet. I could hear the air conditioner clicking above us. "I haven't struggled with the work," I said. No, I'm speaking generally." "Then generally, we should probably avoid assumptions based on age." His jaw tightened. For the first time, Brent looked irritated rather than amused. "I think you're reading too much into casual comments." "Maybe," I stood. "But casual comments are still comments." When I returned to my desk, my hands were calm. That surprised me. The fear had faded. Because Brent had just confirmed something important. He knew his remarks were being noticed. And instead of stopping, he was trying to redefine them. At 4:42 p.m., I received a message from someone in accounting. We barely spoke outside monthly reports. It contained 3 screenshots. Underneath them, one sentence. "You may want these." Then another message arrived. And another. By the time I shut down my computer, 11 different employees had sent me screenshots of Brent's comments. Some were about me, others weren't. I stared at the folder on my screen. 11 witnesses, 1 manager, and a paper trail that suddenly looked much larger than an office joke. The next decision would determine whether any of it actually mattered. If you were in Laura's place, would you take those screenshots straight to HR, or wait until you had even more proof? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe if you want to see how this office drama unfolds. HR laughed first. Then they asked me to close the door behind me. I waited until Thursday morning before reporting anything. Not because I was afraid, because I wanted facts, not frustration. I printed a short timeline, attached the screenshots I personally received, and asked for a private meeting with HR. No accusations, no dramatic language. Just dates, messages, and names of people who had witnessed the comments. At 10:30, I sat across from Jenna, our HR business partner. She skimmed the first page. "Office grandma?" Her mouth twitched. Then she gave a small laugh. "I'm sorry. I know it's not funny to you." I said nothing. That silence lasted just long enough to make her straighten in her chair. Jenna looked through the next screenshots. Brent has a casual management style. Is that what we call this? She folded her hands. I'm saying intent matters. So does repetition. Her expression cooled. I had expected discomfort. I hadn't expected HR failure disguised as diplomacy. Jenna suggested I speak directly with Brent. I reminded her that I already had. She suggested perhaps he didn't understand how his comments were being received. I slid another page across the desk. It contained the message where Brent described me as old school but lovable. He understood enough to put it in writing. That ended the laughter. Jenna leaned closer to the documents. For the first time, she started taking notes. Then her computer chimed. She glanced at the screen. Her face changed. "Excuse me." Another notification appeared, then another. She opened an email and stopped moving. "What is it?" I asked. Jenna looked up. "Did you ask other employees to contact HR?" "No." She turned the monitor slightly away from me. A minute later, her phone rang. She answered quietly, listened, then said, "Please forward everything you have." When she hung up, the room no longer felt like a routine HR complaint. Something had shifted. While I was sitting there, other employees had begun sending their own screenshots directly to Human Resources. Not through me, not as part of some coordinated campaign, independently. Jenna opened another message, then another. By 11 o'clock, 11 employees had submitted written evidence. Some screenshots matched mine. Others showed conversations I had never seen. Brent had mocked an older employee in finance for needing extra time to catch up. He had joked that a longtime employee in procurement came from the paper generation. There were inappropriate workplace jokes about age, experience, and who supposedly belonged in the company's new culture. The pattern was no longer subtle. Jenna stopped defending intent. She called her director. 20 minutes later, I was asked to remain in the conference room. The blinds were closed. The coffee beside me had gone cold. Through the glass wall, I could see people moving around the office, unaware that an internal investigation had just begun. Then I saw Brent. He walked out of his office carrying his laptop, smiling at someone near reception. A moment later, Jenna approached him. Even from across the floor, I saw the smile disappear. He looked toward the conference room, toward me. For the first time since he arrived, Brent didn't look amused. He looked uncertain, and uncertainty looked very different on a man who had spent weeks treating everyone else like the punchline. Jenna returned 10 minutes later. "We're opening a formal workplace investigation," she said. "What happens now?" "We'll interview employees separately. We'll review the chat records and management communications." I nodded. "Am I expected to continue reporting to Brent?" She hesitated. "No. Temporary reporting changes are being arranged." That was the first moment I felt real relief. Not victory, relief. I hadn't demanded Brent be fired. I hadn't threatened anyone. I hadn't tried to embarrass him publicly. I had documented what happened and used the process the company claimed employees could trust. Now HR finally had to decide whether those policies were decoration or rules. When I returned to my desk, nobody applauded. Nobody whispered congratulations. That suited me perfectly. Maya simply placed a fresh coffee beside my keyboard. Daniel walked past and gave me a quiet nod. Professional respect doesn't always arrive with speeches. Sometimes it looks like 11 people refusing to pretend they saw nothing. At 2:15, Brent's scheduled team meeting disappeared from our calendars. At 2:23, his access to the department group chat changed. At 2:31, the office became very, very quiet. By Friday, Brent's office was empty, and nobody knew why. His chair sat pushed neatly under the desk. The glass door was locked. Even the framed motivational quote he loved so much seemed oddly ridiculous without him standing beneath it. No announcement had been made. That created its own kind of tension. People worked quietly, glancing toward the hallway whenever someone from HR appeared. Conversations stopped when unfamiliar executives walked through the department. Even the usual morning complaints about coffee and deadlines had disappeared. At 9:40, Jenna asked me to join another interview. This time, she wasn't alone. A regional HR director named Michael sat beside her with a laptop open and a legal pad filled with notes. His first question was simple. Did Brent ever discuss your age directly? I thought carefully. Not by number. Explain. He used words like old school, long time, veteran, traditional. He joked about fax machines and called me office grandma in front of 22 employees. Michael typed something. Did those comments affect your responsibilities? Yes. I explained the unnecessary reviews of my work, the way Brent redirected decisions I normally handled, and how he asked younger employees to verify tasks I had performed correctly for years. That part mattered. An inappropriate joke was one thing. Changing how an experienced employee was treated because of assumptions attached to age was something else entirely. Michael understood the distinction immediately. For almost an hour, he asked precise questions. Dates, meetings, witnesses, exact wording. I answered only what I knew. Whenever I couldn't remember something exactly, I said so. There was no point making the story larger than it was. Brent had already created enough evidence without my help. Then Michael showed me a printed message. Have you seen this before? I read it twice. It was from Brent to another manager. Laura is useful for legacy stuff, but I need younger energy if we're going to rebuild this team. I felt my stomach tighten. Not because the sentence surprised me, because it removed the last convenient excuse. No joke, no misunderstood tone, no awkward attempt at humor. Just a manager describing experience as legacy stuff while openly connecting younger employees with the future of the department. Where did this come from? I asked. We're reviewing management communications. That was all he would say. When I left the room, Maya was waiting near the printers. You okay? Yes. She studied my face. That didn't sound convincing. I almost laughed. It was educational. She raised an eyebrow. That was the closest I came to explaining. The investigation moved quickly after that. Coworkers were interviewed one by one. Priya spent 40 minutes with HR. Daniel went in after lunch. Marcus emerged looking pale and immediately returned to his desk without speaking to anyone. Nobody compared testimony. That was important. This wasn't office gossip anymore. It was a workplace investigation. At 3 o'clock, an executive assistant arrived carrying 2 cardboard boxes. She walked directly into Brent's office. The department became silent. 5 minutes later, she came out with several personal items: a coffee mug, a framed photograph, a small plant, and the decorative "Move Fast" sign. Daniel looked at the box, then at me. Neither of us said a word. We didn't need to. At 3:18, everyone received an email from senior leadership. Brent Caldwell would remain away from the workplace while the internal investigation continued. Temporary management responsibilities would be handled by the regional operations director. The message contained no accusations, no conclusions, no spectacle, exactly as it should have been. I read it once and closed my inbox. For weeks, Brent had controlled the atmosphere of the department with jokes, little comments, and public mockery. Now, accountability had arrived without raising its voice. Before leaving that evening, I passed his empty office. The city outside the windows was glowing orange in the late sun, and for the first time in days, the floor felt calm. Not cheerful, not triumphant, just calm. And after weeks inside a hostile workplace, calm felt surprisingly luxurious. Then my phone buzzed. It was an email from Michael. Subject: Investigation Update. I opened it. The first sentence made me stop walking. The email began with 6 words. The investigation has now been concluded. I read them twice. Michael asked me to meet with HR the following morning. No details, no hints, just a time, a conference room, and a request to keep the matter confidential until leadership finished speaking with everyone involved. At 9 o'clock, I walked into the same room where Jenna had once laughed at office grandma. This time, nobody laughed. Michael sat across from me with Jenna and our regional operations director. He got straight to the point. The investigation substantiated multiple concerns involving inappropriate workplace comments, age-related remarks, inconsistent treatment of employees, and failures in management judgment. I stayed quiet. Then he continued. Brent Caldwell is no longer employed by the company. There was no dramatic music, no applause outside the door, no cinematic feeling of revenge. Just the soft hum of the ventilation system and a cup of coffee cooling beside my hand. Strangely, that made the moment feel more real. Michael explained that the decision had not been based on one joke or one complaint. It came from the pattern, the screenshots, the witness statements, the management messages, the way Brent had treated multiple employees once he believed casual disrespect would carry no consequences. 11 people had independently submitted evidence. That mattered. So did the message about needing younger energy. And so did something I hadn't known. 2 employees had reported that Brent encouraged them to exclude me from certain projects because he believed I might slow modernization down. That one landed harder than office grandma ever had. A joke could be dismissed. A decision affecting someone's career could not. The company restored the responsibilities that had been quietly shifted away from me and formally documented that my performance had never been the issue. Michael also told me HR would undergo additional manager training on handling harassment complaints. Jenna looked uncomfortable. Good. Not because I wanted her humiliated. Because discomfort is sometimes the first sign that accountability has finally reached the right desk. I owe you an apology, she said. I looked at her. For laughing? For minimizing the complaint before reviewing the evidence. That answer mattered more. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. I didn't need her embarrassment. I needed the system to work better the next time someone walked into that room. By noon, leadership sent a department-wide announcement confirming that Brent had left the company. No explanation was included. There didn't need to be. The atmosphere changed almost immediately. People spoke normally again. The nervous pauses disappeared. Someone started arguing with the printer. Marcus complained about a deadline. Maya brought pastries into the break room. Ordinary office noise had never sounded so good. Later that afternoon, Daniel stopped beside my desk. So, he said, does this mean we have to stop calling you the department historian? I looked up slowly. He froze. Then I smiled. Only if you want your expense reports processed this century. He laughed. So did I. That joke felt different. Respect makes all the difference. A month later, I was asked to help lead a cross-department operations project because, according to the regional director, my institutional knowledge and judgment were exactly what the company needed. Same experience, different language. That was the lesson. I never destroyed Brent's career. I never plotted revenge, leaked messages, or tried to embarrass him publicly. He documented his own behavior. 11 coworkers simply refused to help him hide it. And HR eventually did what it should have done the first time. At 58, I learned something I wish more people understood about workplace bullying. You do not always have to shout louder than the person disrespecting you. Sometimes you stay calm. You keep the receipts. You let witnesses speak for themselves. And you make sure the truth has somewhere official to land. Months later, the folder called Workplace Communications was still on my computer. I could have deleted it. Instead, I kept it, not as a trophy, as a reminder. Experience was never the weakness Brent thought it was. It was the reason I knew exactly when to stop arguing and start documenting.